What is up, everybody? Welcome back. It is your favorite director's favorite director, in the famous words of Alison De Laurentiis.
Did you miss me?
Welcome back, welcome back. It feels like it's been forever, and this time I can say that because it has been forever. I haven't filmed in like 4 days. I know. Don't. I already know. We are on episode 4 of the Erik Tells All doc. We should be wrapping that up here shortly, and then I'm going to jump into so many Christmas movies after this. So if you have any that you'd like me to watch, just let me know down below. Outside of that though, I want to finish this up. I want to kind of wrap this up, and then I do want to watch at least one video of the recent updates about them, just so that I know what's going on there. Yeah, so that's kind of where my head is at with this. In the second episode, we got to see Tammy, Erik's Boo Bear. I'm so excited. It made me so happy. And it made me happy because, like, I forget that sometimes he's like, Erik and Lyle, I guess, are like this phenomenon, it feels like. And sometimes I forget how human they actually are. So it was just really cool to see her and to know that he is happy. Outside of that, I have a lot of things coming, a lot of new things coming. I'm doing a lot of different things and trying to sort through all of the footage or all of the content as best as I can to get up whatever I need to get up. So with that being said, if you're new, welcome. If you're not new, you know what that means. Pull up a chair, lay in bed, grab some snacks, and let's watch it.
Why they were killed is what the focus of all of our evidence will be on.
We view the abuse excuse as a bullshit offense.
I can't stand that, man.
So afraid. I remember the day I was supposed to testify, I took my Xanax and I took Lyle's Xanax. I couldn't handle it.
The fact that they were on Xanax is so wild.
Because of it, and then I got watched.
What does Xanax do? I don't know that I know what it does. I mean, I know that I've heard it.
I remember when I first took the stand, I was blanking out.
Telling Lyle that,
Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Him having to relive all this was the most traumatic thing ever. Truthfully.
Oh, my dad.
This is the first time he's saying it out loud.
I started to describe what my dad had been doing to me from the time I was a kid, and I just started to be able to talk about it, and I couldn't even think. My brain began to shut down.
Remember too, in like the last, I don't know, it was either the last episode or the second episode, where we talked about how the psychologist said that not only were they processing this on an individual level, but also on a worldwide level. And he just said, like, I had just kind of come to terms with being able to talk about this. So now I was expected to do it again, but this time you're doing it in front of cameras, and you're doing it in front of people, and you're doing it in front of people who aren't going to believe you off the top of your head. What? Off tops. And you're doing it in front of 12 people that you have to try to convince. And that's a tough word, right? Anytime that we use the word convince in a statement, it's almost as if it didn't happen. But in this case, it did happen. So I couldn't imagine what he was going through. And clearly the Xanax didn't really help, because he still couldn't, like, there are just some things that medicine just cannot penetrate through. And I think that this is one of them. It's talking about something that's so traumatic that you've endured for so long that it's almost become a part of you. It's like attached to you, like a parasite.
If I take off my reporter hat and become a member of the jury, I believed it. I just did.
No doubt. There's no doubt there.
The fact that Kitty would not allow me to go down the hallway to find out what was going on, how I wasn't allowed to see the boys right after they came out of the bedroom, all these different things.
Start to connect, yeah.
And that's when I really, really said to myself, you know what? That son of a bitch was actually doing what they say he was doing back in that bedroom.
Over and over.
And did you have some expectation of how that was going to happen?
Yes.
And what did you expect?
I was going to go to college.
I personally could not have formed any other opinion that they are telling the truth.
Wasn't buying, what Lyle and Erik were selling.
We know.
All of this talk about, the parents and incest and rape.
Because you couldn't believe it. Yeah, for sure. Whatever.
Yeah.
He was saying that
Yeah, I think it's so ironic that we do that thing, don't speak ill of the dead. If the dead deserves for me to speak ill of them, I'm gonna do it. Period. Don't speak ill of the dead. For what reason? If the dead was hurting me, if that person was hurting me and I have nothing nice to say, then what? I'm just not supposed to say it? I'm not supposed to express myself? And it's ironic too, because what he is saying is we hated how they talked about their parents. And it's like, bro, they didn't want to talk about their parents like that either, but they didn't have a choice. It was their only defense. They sat there and said, we did not want to get up on that stand. We did not want to tell the story again. We did not want to talk about it. We did not want to ruin our parents' reputation. We didn't want to kill them a second time. Like, they say all of this, but nobody listens. Even now, like, I know that you know what? I'm over it.
he had told me never to tell Lyle, and that he had warned me not to do that, and now he said that Lyle was going to tell everyone, and that it was my fault, and now Lyle was going to tell everyone, and he was not going to let that happen.
9th day on the stand is crazy.
9 days on this, telling all of the secrets that are the most shameful, humiliating, terrible things to the whole world that's watching live on TV. It just seemed endless.
It's crazy not to believe their story.
Last chance to drive it all home.
Oh, closing
It is
arguments.
called final arguments.
It's called closing arguments. It's embarrassing for you.
For more hours of drilling and grilling, and then went back home to have dinner, which was like Jeopardy, and more drilling and grilling, and then had to satisfy his father's perversion, and then had to do his...
Oh. I've been watching The Lincoln Lawyer, and it's so interesting the way that, every defense attorney is portrayed. And I keep, this is real life. This is accurate. Even The Lincoln Lawyer is for entertainment. And they probably have a consultant to help them, but this is real life. And this closing argument, no wonder it was a hung jury. That makes sense. At least, and in regards to, no wonder it wasn't first degree murder. Listen to her closing argument.
Leslie, she might pull it off. They might get off, That's how much doubt was put into.
She should have. They should have won.
We all expected we still are going to get a guilty verdict, but it just takes one juror to say, I buy that.
Man.
To have your life in the hands of people you don't know. I had no idea what they believed or who they believed. Surreal.
A month? I don't know if I said a month.
It became obvious immediately that it was men against women, that teenage boys can be abused by their father.
I do not believe that the Menendez brothers were molested.
I've put it off this entire time. I've done a great job putting it off, but it's time we talk about it. I've said it every now and again, and we've touched on it every now and again, but this is finally the time where we talk about it. To say that men don't have the proper parts to be sexually abused is the most ignorant, disgusting, and disturbing thing one could ever say. And I say that because you're the person that I'm fearful about when it comes to your children. Like, would you say that if it was your son? Would you have said that if they would have stepped forward? You know what I mean? Like, what is the, like, also, what's the purpose of that? What do you think? Like, what do you gain from making a comment like that? And unfortunately, it didn't age well, babes. It didn't age well. We're now in a society where we believe the victim. The victim is usually telling the truth. And also, in what world would we re-victimize these people? And that's all you're doing. To sit here and say that it's an abuse excuse, and to say that it's not accurate, and to say that it's not real, and to say that it didn't happen. It's like, of course victims aren't going to come forward. Look at the way that you treat them, especially male victims. We see what you do to females all the time. So in what world would a male victim come forward? It's just, yeah, guys, I've heard it. I've seen it. I've seen all of your comments about it. It's not something that like should be taken lightly. I think that anybody who is capable of saying that, you should reevaluate their image and who they are. Just because I think that there's like a level that there's like levels to it, right? Like, not believing them is one thing. Not believing them because you think that they're trying to use it to get out of this defense or to get out of this crime is another thing. But not believing them and then degrading abuse victims in any capacity is a different level that I will never understand. I will never be okay with. It's the reason why I don't like seeing the people backtrack. I don't like seeing people go, oh, well, no, like now that I've like got all the information, it's like, no, hold on, wait a minute. And you know, it's funny because last video or the video before, I was so adamant about like, I'm so thankful that I was born in this time period. And I say that because I think a lot of people who are watching this back now that might have been around during the trial and didn't believe them at first, that do believe them now, I think that it'd be easy for them to say, well, we didn't have all of the facts. We didn't have all of the footage. We didn't have the evidence. And for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm watching this, but I have all the evidence. But it's also, it's not about having all the evidence. It's about having empathy. It's about discernment. It's about knowing whether or not they're telling the truth. And I'm sorry, but you don't get on the stand and you do not act like that. Like that, I've not even seen phenomenal actresses make me feel like that. So, no, I don't think time is a good enough excuse in this situation.
What do you suppose the population of this country is in terms of those who believe that boys who suffer enough have a right to blow their parents away bloodily?
What? That doesn't even make sense. That boys who suffer enough blow that, what? That's not, okay. Here's the problem. Statistically, you can't even measure this. Statistically, we already know that, right? The girl, the expert in parricide has already said that the percentage of this is so low statistically that like it's a blip. Okay, so that's first and foremost. You though did not experience that, and I'm so tired of that excuse of like, well, plenty of people who are abused and plenty of people who suffer at the hands of their parents don't da 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 da. Plenty of people were not sexually, physically, emotionally, spiritually broken and abused by their parents their entire life. Okay, plenty of people did not fear for their life. Nobody knew what it was like to be a Menendez being raised by Kitty and Jose. That's the frustrating part here. And don't get me wrong, there are absolutely guilty people. There are absolutely people who unfortunately do use this as an excuse. They're absolutely like that is a reality, unfortunately. And to those people, obviously, the best thing about this, guys, and you'll learn this throughout life, is that the truth is the truth. You cannot refute that. You cannot deny that. It just is. It stands alone. And the truth will always be exposed. There's never going to be a time where the truth is not exposed. And in this situation, we've went, 30-something odd years now? And they still stick to what they said. They have nothing to lose. They've had nothing to lose this entire time. At any point in time, they could have lied. They could have been like, all right, guys, it was a lie. We're going to be honest with you. It was a lie. At any point in time. But for 30 years, they have dealt with the backlash. They've dealt with the humiliation of the world. They've dealt with the words. They've dealt with the laughs. They've dealt with the yeah, right. Like they've dealt with all of that. and they still stand by that this happened to them. Nobody gets re-victimized by the world that long if it didn't actually happen.
And he's going to be in jail probably for at least another one. That's miserable.
It was deliberate, premeditated, malicious, first-degree double homicide.
I was surprised.
Okay.
I do not believe any jury will ever convict Erik Menendez of first-degree murder.
I do not think a decision can be reached. It's too divisive an issue. There's too much information.
It's an ego thing.
The majority of the jury did not support first-degree murder.
Everything would go over again. That the entire trial would have to be done all over again.
To sit and suffer through that all over again.
During the retrial, I was the prosecutor along with David Kahn.
We like doing what we do, which is basically putting people who need to be put away into jail.
They've been saying something in the Lincoln Lawyer that really makes sense to me. And it was having to defend 1,000 guilty men and walking 1,000 guilty men is worth saving one innocent one. And I say that because, not because they're innocent of anything as far as the crime. They did do that. They committed that crime and they deserved to serve the time for that. However, innocent in regards to what they went through was prison enough. That was their time served. However you want to look at it. This was not a case where these two were going to go off and re-offend and they were going to go off and commit more crimes and go on a spree. That's not what was going to happen. This was a case of kids who got to the point where they literally couldn't take it anymore. And the only option that they saw fit was to kill their parents. And also they thought that their lives were in jeopardy. And so innocent in regards to what they went through was enough to, how do I want to word that? What they went through was enough torture and punishment that involuntary manslaughter, make them serve their 5 to 10 years and let them get out on good behavior because they would have. Like that is what I mean by innocent. So I literally couldn't imagine them getting put to death, dying, and then these letters coming out that prove that they were sexually abused by their parents. Baby, the universe was working during that deliberation because nobody cared. Nobody cared. Even if it was the truth, nobody cared. That was the frustrating part.
After the first trial, there probably would have been a resolution had there not been the media storming. Because what it does is it just magnifies. It makes everything so extreme.
No, we never argued that child abuse is an excuse for murder. What we argued is child abuse creates a terrible fear.
Yeah.
I think to play it down or to satirize it is unwise, unfair, and possibly truly unjust.
Thank you.
Never an excuse for anything. It's an explanation.
Ooh.
Happened.
Yes.
The reaction by the public was, everybody's got their problems. And you don't.
That is so crazy.
Who think that these despicable movies or these ludicrous books are what really happened.
What's the problem, please?
They shot and killed my parents.
Oh my God,
Sir? Can you repeat that, please?
That is actually kind of annoying. It's not kind of annoying. It is annoying. It's annoying because we know what happened, right? Erik specifically stated that he was in the room with his parents. Like, he couldn't believe it. He was in that room and he kept going in that room, and Lyle had to forcibly remove him from that room. So to have him just kind of sitting there and they're just acting it out is kind of gross. Oh God. Nobody ever did this justice, did they?
His was predictably hostile and mean-spirited. Spoiled rich kids kill parents for loot.
Doesn't even make any sense.
The media, because so much attention was brought to the case. And then when OJ got arrested, it just made everything is so much worse.
I think the DA's office in California, they needed vindication.
It ain't our fault you're bad at your job. It is not our fault you literally suck at your job, bro.
The judge knows by the second trial what the defense is going to do. And the judge was not sympathetic, and he excluded
Men.
that had been in the first trial.
Wild. Their entire defense. That's crazy. I was gonna say, how are you gonna just... What? Man, this shit was rigged.
More than that to make you think you have serious problems in the Justice Department.
His goal in that trial was
To get a conviction.
no doubt about it. It was really painful to watch, but there was nothing that I could do.
That is so wild.
And essentially, right in front of us, he took away my entire defense.
I think after the first trial, when it appeared, or at least people were saying, he wasn't able to control Leslie Abramson.
Oh, she hurt his feelings.
The second time, no. He has still got to make the right rulings, but if he thinks that these guys got away with something, that's going to impact the rulings.
Got away with what? It was a hung jury.
The so-called abuse excuse to limit evidence that has nothing to do with this case, limit evidence going back years and years.
It's like, what do you do now that there's a letter out proving that they were telling the truth, but you didn't let them use that? Oh, what the actual misjustice that was had during this.
Used every player, every play, deflated the ball, and she pulled every trick. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean in a good lawyerly way. She did what she had to do to hang that jury.
It's like, it's not about doing what you have to do to hang the jury. It's about telling the truth. And if we're not understanding that, then we have to reevaluate how we see the justice system and how the justice system is actually treating people. And to this day, there's just such a gross amount of injustice that was had about not allowing them to use that as a defense, mostly because there is now proof, there is now evidence. If they don't get a retrial, if they don't get a resentencing, I will be shocked to see how America reacts, to see how the world reacts. Because when you now have physical evidence dated back prior to 8 months, I believe it was, to the actual act of violence. If somebody would have just spoken up then, if somebody would have just, and I believe that like the letter had happened to like get lost or something like that. I don't know what like the actual situation was with that, but to then know that you are responsible for not allowing that defense, regardless of how it would have affected the jury, it's so baffling to me. So baffling, because they were telling the truth, and now there's proof that they were telling the truth. Oh, everybody involved in this just doesn't look good.
And he went through each witness and said they can't testify to that. They're not allowed to testify to that. And having been the judge in the first trial, he knew exactly what the most important aspects of it.
Just doesn't make any sense to me how he was able to be the judge again. I don't know. We should probably look into that as a society.
The rulings he made certainly lend credence to Abramson's claim that he wants to see them convicted, and I believe he did.
For people to say that
here she goes defending him,
changed a ruling or did something because he wanted to see a conviction is unfair to him.
You know, I think the judges
Girl, I can't listen to anything that the prosecution has to say. Of course it's not unfair to him because you won. Of course. Yeah. I just think it's so unfair to him. And who he is as a person. Girl, yeah, you won. So of course you would defend him.
It wasn't even a feeling. It was clear. The mood in the courtroom was focused on conviction for first-degree murder.
Wild.
Jury in the above entitled action find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder.
This guy.
Shocking to everybody and to the district attorney's office.
No, OJ did it.
The second trial started within days.
But OJ wrote a book about it.
Now we're going to have appointed with every defendant that comes up. And we were the next defendant.
There was a sense, a desperation in the DA's office.
It's not a good word to use.
For the district attorney's office to lose so many high-profile cases. And
I don't agree with her.
My God, that was a black eye on that department. Of course they're going to double their efforts and go after the Menendez brothers. It's failure. It's an embarrassment. They're not going to lose this one.
Be better. Be better. Period. Be better. Do your job better.
Unlike the first trial in which TV coverage was permitted, there were only still cameras in court this time.
I think that's unfortunate. I think the press should have a First Amendment right to be in there, and I don't
Really?
think the judge should just get to decide.
Oh, hold on. She doesn't feel like a judge should just get to decide. She doesn't feel like that. Well, we feel like a judge shouldn't just get to decide that they don't get to use their defense at all. You know what I mean? Like, we feel like that. That's how we feel. You know what I'm saying?
Even if the Menendez brothers were abused, what difference does it make?
Overall, we've demonstrated fabrication and premeditation and a very strong case of a killing for reason of greed.
Let me say this too. Nobody, and I say this barring Erik and Lyle, nobody knows what the intent was of these brothers when they went and they bought those guns. Erik said, we went and we got them for self-defense because we genuinely believed that there was going to be a time where we were going to have to defend ourselves. And I believe him. I with everything in me, and I will stand on that. And I will debate about it. Nobody knows what the intent was when they went to buy these guns, whether they used the fake ID, whatever the case may be. I don't, whatever you want to say. They could have very easily bought those guns for self-defense and then just had happened to use them in that moment because they thought that they were going to die. And so what bothers me is when we talk about premeditation, you're thinking about the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. And you would think, that with premeditation comes the after, right? It comes like, okay, we're not going to spend any of this money. We have to act like this. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to do this. But that wasn't what happened. It was like, okay, this heat of the moment issue, this heat of the moment killing. Then after the fact, they were going to say something, but then the cops took forever to get there. So to the point where they had to call the cops themselves. And then it kind of turned into, okay, well, let's just say that the mafia did it, I guess, because I don't know what's going on and I'm scared. Like, if we're going to talk about cold, calculated, premeditated murder, like, let's really put into perspective what that looks like. Jeff Dahmer, Ted Bundy. You know what I'm saying? Like, this was sloppy if you want to say that it was premeditated first-degree murder. It was very, very sloppy. Criminal Minds.
David Kahn's conduct, I thought, was shameful. I really do. He came in like a hitman. What right did he have to look inside those kids' minds if these kids...
Too much tennis, not enough hugs. Like, that's not funny. That's not like a funny joke. It's actually kind of disgusting. With your fucking big ass polka dot tie on.
Were the love slaves of their father. We can't comprehend that. It shows a callousness that doesn't serve him very well.
We believe that they're as guilty as could be. We believe that...
It wasn't about whether or not they were guilty. Why are we not, like, talking about that? We knew that they were guilty. They said that they had did it. It was why.
And we're going to do that because we wanted to get it right, and we thought, and I still believe, right means they are convicted.
Nobody doesn't believe that. We don't believe that. We don't think that they should have got acquitted. We just think that it should have been a lesser sentence.
In the second trial, he eliminated most of those witnesses during the guilt phase and left Erik to tell the horror tale himself.
How do you not talk about that? No, genuinely. How do you not? It's like what we look for is an outcry witness. When something happens, you outcry, right? You tell them what happened. We look for that now, right? Ooh, Olivia Benson and Rafael Barba could never. They would have never. Oh.
You don't generally get to see that. Most people hold it in, but he did not.
I believe this is false.
To convey the trauma and the terror and all of the bad things that happened in my house. It's almost impossible for me to do it by myself because I could say it.
It's a big burden to carry. Yeah, that's a big burden to carry no matter what.
I found it troubling that there were very different rulings in the second trial than the first one. There were so many changes, and so many of them went to the heart of what was successful in the first case.
Interesting. It's interesting to hear people of a higher statute say that.
Yeah, there's a lot of shock and awe when it was determined that Leslie Abramson had asked Dr. Vickery to alter his notes. I thought it was like a death knell for her whole career.
What did she do?
I was meeting with Leslie Abramson, preparing, because I was scheduled to be a witness, and she was reviewing my notes, and she said, wait a minute, this can't be in here. There were some statements such as, we can't take it anymore. And Leslie says, that's got to come out, because that shows premeditation. And I said, no, it doesn't. It just shows that they were terrified.
Yeah, it shows they were exhausted. Yeah.
Or Erik says, I'm thinking about killing myself. I'm at the end of my rope. She says, well, you can't put that in there because that shows that he's been thinking about doing something to his parents. And she exploded.
I think I want to state here that all that ended up happening was Leslie was kind of, and I don't remember if he said this was before the first or the second trial. I'm assuming it was the second trial, possibly the first. Either way, I think if it was the second trial, she was just under so much pressure. She was so exhausted. It was kind of like, our defense is gutted. I don't know what else to do here. So if you get on the stand and you say these things, we are definitely screwed. I don't think that it was any ill intent. I don't think that it was malicious. I don't think that she's a bad defense attorney because of it. I think that she's seeing very tunnel vision. She's very much seeing like, okay, this is how the prosecution is going to use it. This is how the prosecution is going to use it, which I guess as the defense attorney, you would have to be. But him as a psychiatrist is saying, no. There's a context here. And you can see it however you want to. So you're going to see it one way and the prosecutor's going to see it another way, which is anything in life, right? Your perspective and perception is going to be based off of your own experience and what side you're fighting for. So it wouldn't have mattered whether the note stayed in or not.
And she pointed at me and she said, look, you take that out of the notes or you're out. I was really in a dilemma.
Okay. It was the second trial. Yeah. I think that she was just overwhelmed.
So
I couldn't find the notes anywhere.
And so Leslie's secretary got a call from Leslie saying, send Dr. Vickery's notes to the prosecution. And so she pulled the file and she pulled out the original note and sent that to the prosecution.
So perjure, he perjured himself on the stand.
He's like, your notes are different from my notes. And then he just jumped up and announced that the notes had been tampered with.
Abramson said to rewrite page 18 because too prejudicial.
So she hurt her own defense at that point.
Tell us your side. And that's what she took the fifth and said no. She stopped being an active participant in the case.
The Vickery incident happened and the notes were being changed. Then
Leslie, the truth was gonna win for you no matter what.
At the time, I thought it was gonna have an impact, and I thought it was going to be the nail that was gonna make the jury come back with death.
Well, thank God that there was somebody on that jury that didn't allow that.
At the end of the case, at the very end of the case, the judge altered which instructions would be allowed to the jury. He did not allow imperfect self-defense of an honest but unreasonable belief that your life is in danger. He took that away.
Crazy.
He destroyed these kids' opportunity to present the only defense they had. And it was a valid defense. It was viable. It went to the heart of the case.
Such a bad judge.
Told the jury they couldn't do nothing other than convict them of first-degree murder.
And we already know that they're guilty of that. Like, we already know that they're guilty of killing their parents. Of course you are.
The judge was still worried that the jury would not come back with the right verdict, that he didn't allow the imperfect self-defense instructions. So at the end, he then pulled that.
That's insanity. That is insane. Clearly they're guilty. Clearly they did it. So if the only option is first degree or not guilty, of course they have to go first degree. 4 days is crazy pants.
Heartbreaking.
Oh.
They got it wrong, and they got it wrong because the truth wasn't allowed into the trial.
It was a very, very sad experience.
The brothers, Erik and Lyle, showed very little emotion as the verdicts were read.
Like, even that statement, it's like, what were they supposed to do? Break down and cry? They've been doing that their whole lives. They've been doing that their whole lives. They would cry themselves to sleep. After the murders, they would cry themselves to sleep. Like, what more do you want from them? It's so crazy that people have to act a certain way for us to actually believe that they didn't do it.
For me to convict a first-degree murder, it was an emotional decision. And I remember sitting there saying, based on what I know right now, I'm very confident in what I'm doing. I have no doubts whatsoever.
It's crazy that you can't even really blame the jury. Like, they did their job. If there were only two options, not guilty or first degree murder, and we know that they were guilty. They've already said that they were guilty. So basically the second jury did exactly what they were supposed to do with the information that was given to them. If we're going to blame a jury, we got to blame the jury from the first trial. And then if we're going to blame anybody for the second trial, it's the judge. You kept out the most important thing. You kept the truth out of the trial. How does that work?
Hearing it was still shocking.
Some jurors said later they believed much of what we told them.
Yeah.
But evidently, even the more sympathetic jurors couldn't find a legal justification for anything less than first.
That is so crazy.
When he heard the guilty verdict, District Attorney Gil...
It's like pumping his fist in the air. That's so weird because you're trash. Thank you.
With all the smirks on his face he wants, he thinks he scored a victory. He scored no victory. It was anyone. Mickey Mouse could have won that case with Weisberg's ruling.
I love him.
The trial gets underway. That will determine whether Erik and Lyle Menendez face life in prison.
It's like the only justice, I would guess,
to accept the idea
is
sexual abuse was a fact.
They didn't get put to death.
Child sexual abuse should have come in, and especially in the penalty phase.
If you're gonna win properly. Oh, as a coach, I always tell my boys that if they blow out teams by 40, 50 points, it's not a good win. Don't remember that. You remember the win that you had to fight for. You remember the win where they put up just as good of a fight as you and you still took it on the other end. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's not a win because you didn't do anything. The truth was not in this. You did not win. It's like, you know, when you say fair and square, you didn't win fair and square. They didn't. If they would have told their defense and you still would have got that first degree verdict, then I can say, okay, no, you won. You just kind of won. That's what the jury said. You didn't. There was no defense.
And I know, sitting here today, having represented dozens and dozens of people over the years who were sexually abused, that it has a very profound effect.
Of course. It's like they have to go through it themselves to understand.
Yes, extremely. In fact, the very last closing argument given by Lyle's attorney, Charlie Gessler, it seemed as if he was almost about to cry. His voice was very...
like
dead eyes, and those eyes should be dead, and pointing at Erik Menendez and calling him a liar and saying that he's always been a liar. But
what?
So the state really,
that's insane.
And of course, the defense begging for mercy.
That's actually crazy.
I really wasn't sure which was worse, which was better. Life in prison forever, or to be put to death.
That's so crazy. Like, look at the difference in emotion. Like, one of them is emotional and in almost in tears, and then the other one is just angry. You're so angry. You got what you wanted. You got the guilty verdict. You didn't need to put them to death. That's crazy. It's so crazy, especially because you got the guilty verdict without even using their defense. They didn't even use their defense. So you would have been putting them to death based off of like that. That would have been, oh, I couldn't even imagine what the uproar would have been if they would have gotten put to death. The judge didn't let the defense in. Like, I just couldn't even imagine. It's bad. It's all around bad. The second trial was just all around terrible, and it was despicable. And I'm so thankful that I didn't need to watch that. Like, I didn't have to see that. Like, that we didn't get the cameras in their room. We have one more episode. I'm gonna knock it out for you, as always. You guys are great. I love you. I appreciate you. As always, you can go find this on my Patreon early, because I'm pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Outside of that, though, we're gonna watch this next episode and we're gonna wrap it up. So be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and above all else, I love you.